Hi everyone, my name is Madyson with Stanley Associates, and today I'll be joined by our esteemed attorneys and my bosses, Dustin Brown and Jacob Hughey, who you have probably seen in videos across all of our social media platforms. Today I'm actually going to be stepping to the side and getting our attorneys' thoughts on the highly controversial, potentially dangerous haunted attraction, McKamey Manor, just in time for spooky season. And please be advised that nothing you hear in this video is or should be taken as legal advice. These are purely opinions based on already public information. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you have a topic that you want to hear talked about that you're just burning and itching for my attorneys to tell you a little bit more about, go ahead and leave it in the comments. We're always open to ideas. Now let's get into it. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. How are your Octobers going so far?
It's going good.
It's going good. Okay, well this is pretty on theme for the month, and you're going to learn a lot more about McKamey Manor than you would have ever wanted to.
I'm a little nervous.
You should be.
But that's okay.
So I'm going to give you a quick rundown. McKamey Manor is an American haunted house in a survival horror style. I use these descriptors loosely, and you'll see why here in a second. It's considered the pioneer of extreme haunted attractions, my goodness. Founded by Russ McKamey, the house operates year-round, offering visitors tours that can last up to 8 hours. To participate, guests must sign a 40-page waiver that includes the inability to leave or stop the experience without the staff's permission. There's no safe word. You can't get out if they don't want you to. And you're subjected to various forms of physical and psychological torture, including, but not limited to, having your bones broken, your teeth removed without anesthesia, and being drugged. For this, McKamey Manor has attracted significant controversy and criticism. Thoughts, just based off of that description?
I'm thinking about, clearly the first thing I'm thinking about as an attorney is how do you waive out of getting your teeth removed? If I was to argue, I'd argue that maybe that the person who signed that waiver wasn't in the right mental state at the time.
That'd be crazy.
And maybe they didn't have the capacity to sign a waiver like that. But
right.
That's what I would argue.
I'm not going to that haunted house
right.
for the most part.
Haunted house.
Piggyback on what he says, I think they're trying to do a good job of giving these people enough information to know what they're waiving. But I think that a lot of these releases are challengeable because they're not going to tell you everything they did. And probably somebody's going to get injured on something that doesn't have to do with getting their teeth pulled. And there's probably some things you're not going to be able to waive your agreement on. Release or no release, it wouldn't stop me from filing a lawsuit if a client came to us that was hurt there.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I think people have to understand that about waivers. They're going to waive everything. That's the goal of them. Sometimes they're very broad. There are laws in Texas on certain things that shouldn't be able to be waived out of. And again, like your capacity at the time, there's a lot of things that go into it. So if you have any question, don't just assume the waiver is correct and, call a lawyer on that.
Right. So my initial thinking too, I was like, what is the context in which people, there's willing participants. But, imagine somebody's under the influence or somebody's under, their brain's not developed quite yet. They're, 18 years old. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to go into this, not really thinking too much what if X, Y, or Z were to happen. The reason I wanted to talk to you guys about McKamey Manor is because of this waiver, this unbelievably long waiver.
Question. Mm-hmm. Did anyone read the waiver? The bigger the waiver, the less likely you are to know what's in it or agree to it. Right. How much time is going into this? They're handing you this. Even now when you scroll the Apple agreement, right? Nobody reads that. Mm-hmm. And so if you're about to go to a haunted house, and here you go. There's 40 pages to read real quick.
What state is this in, too?
So he founded it in San Diego, moved it to Tennessee.
Some people will videotape something. Right, if they'll videotape the agreement. Or
I'd assume there's a lot of videotape.
Are they going to
videotape
these people reading 40 pages? I don't think so.
There is a video of people
or
going through it.
Do they take their phones?
They take their phones, but Russ McKamey and his team record the entire thing. But I think the thing that people, even regarding willing participants, I think it's expected to have your safety considered, even in extreme haunts. There are extreme haunts out there where you are tased and pelted with BB guns, and they do have safe words. They do ask you, are you still consenting to this? Are you still good? Not McKamey Manor.
Is this a dentist removing the teeth? Okay.
Good question.
And they're constantly pushing and pushing and pushing the boundaries. And I think Russ McKamey's, like, the reason why he's doing this is pretty irrelevant. But regardless, some people speculate, and this is purely opinion, that he is hiding behind a waiver to, like, not have to, no consequences, because waiver. Calling into question not only the legality, but, like, the morality of it and, like, how much weight it can actually hold.
Ultimately, people are going to have insurance anyway. And so what he's doing, I think it was smart, is he's playing this up. It's not like he's not going to get sued. I think the guy knows he'll get sued, probably. They're factoring all that in. So in this case, it's not like there's not insurance coverage, I'm assuming. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about how big, like we're giving some publicity, actually, when the guy's probably smart enough to have the coverage. And so if someone sues him, the insurance company, which he probably pays a lot to have that policy, is there to provide the coverage, I would assume, right? So that's going to happen. I think that's going to happen. People could trip and fall in the parking lot of this place and have a lawsuit.
There are people who are speaking out and suffering from, like, PTSD and stuff like that, and long-term physical pain, discomfort.
And that would be something I think would be hard to release.
Yeah.
Hard to be released. Unknown future mental consequences, right? Like, you don't know. For instance, nobody's suing the Army because they got PTSD when they got sent off to war, and that's a little different. But that's something that'd be hard to release on a private, from a private business owner point of view. Is like, oh yeah, we might pull your teeth out, but how can he predict future psychological trauma?
Yeah, I'd bet it was a really expensive insurance policy. I don't see an insurance company being loving that, but I do think that the release is going to be great for their defense. I mean, yeah, he's going to bring it into the trial. Doesn't mean they don't have a claim. They're certainly going to have to prove any type of long-term mental issues. It might reduce the amount that they are awarded. But yeah, he's clearly making profit and has looked at both sides of it. Anytime you have a business, you're going to have claims against you. You're going to have, like he said, falling in the parking lot. He's going to have an insurance policy. But I'm assuming that the profit outweighs the amount of he has to pay his insurance companies. That's what it ultimately ends up being, is how much are you paying per month on the insurance policy. And I'm assuming he's getting a lot of clients to go in there. He's making a lot off of it. So with that comes, lawsuits on falling, and it never ends up taking all of the profit out of it. It's just an insurance policy.
No, and I mean, for instance, the insurance policy has nothing to do with the profit, right? Other than the fact that you pay the premiums. But one of the things if I was him, I'm sure he's smarter than me, he would have found one of the favorable states to move to as well. So being in California, some of the laws may not be in his favor. Moving to Tennessee, which we can immediately see there's a bit of a political difference there. And some of these other states where, for instance, states where there's a lot of skiing, I don't hear of a whole lot of lawsuits where people fall down skiing because the mountain was too steep, right? You don't even sign waivers to, you kind of do, but it's like there's laws protecting, I think, a lot of those types of places. So maybe Tennessee has some pretty favorable laws. I don't really know, but that would be something if I was him, I would have looked into that.
I bet more people are going to this thing because they read this. Like, I'm kind of interested.
Exactly.
I don't want to go to it.
No.
If I could just, like, sit back on my truck and just watch it,
I'll tailgate the thing.
And the release, honestly, might be crazier than just another thing to show the media. Like, they might not actually be, I don't know though, because I don't know about the case, but they might not actually be pulling teeth out. It might be another thing that people will show in the media and get this guy more,
And there's no, like, ongoing case or anything. People have, been speculating, like, can you even do anything? A lot of people just don't. They just talking negatively about it, like going to social media.
That's the thing, right? As someone's reading a 40-page release, they are under the impression that I can't even sue these people.
So let me read you off. It is a 40-page waiver, but I've taken, like, 4 of the points of, like, you can't hold us responsible for.
Okay.
So I'm going to read you number 50 through 53. Number 50. Participant fully understands and agrees that once participant enters McKamey Manor, there is no quitting unless serious physical or psychological injury presents itself. 51. Participant fully understands that injuries may occur during the tour of McKamey Manor, which may include, but are not limited to, head, neck, and back injuries, death, stroke, traumatic brain injury, brain aneurysms, cerebral or retinal hemorrhage, subdural hematoma, loss of consciousness, whiplash, harmful heart reactions, nausea, dizziness, headaches, lacerations, broken or sprained bones, torn ligaments, bleeding wounds, scrapes, cuts, strokes, or drowning. Participant does not hold McKamey Manor responsible. 52, participant fully understands and agrees that being scared, having panic attacks, does not constitute serious injury. 53, participant fully understands and agrees that their tour may include the use of hypodermic needles, zappers, tasers, or dog shot collars. After hearing all these potential serious injuries, any change of heart, any thought?
My first thought is that I'm going to say this guy knew how dangerous this place was. He's already telling me all the bad things that might happen to me. He's on notice of what he's put together. So that's going to hurt him, I think. Because some of these things you might have to prove foreseeability or knowledge of the defendant. I'm going to say, look, you knew how dangerous this was. Look at all these things you told me might happen to me, right? Drowning, you know? I don't think any of those things are going to happen. I mean, I want to say that. But I think that probably the release it builds the anticipation. When you're going on a trip, the planning and anticipation makes the trip more enjoyable. When you're joining a fraternity, the hazing makes people more into the process. They appreciate what they have to go through a bit more. I think this is all part of the process. The release is as much part of it as what's going on inside the manor.
What's funny about like hearing you use the example hazing, people have died during hazing and been found criminally liable for it.
That's another aspect of this. What about a crime being committed? What if someone stabs you with a needle in there? Is that a crime?
I think what they're trying to do with that waiver is legalize crimes. A lot of it sounds like assault to me. I'm thinking that it just as a matter of public policy, I don't think we want to encourage places coming to my state that you come in there and you get mutilated. You know what I mean? So I think just even a public policy argument, by allowing these waivers to be good in our state, then you're allowing these companies to come down here and mutilate people. I just don't think that would ever get through just on that argument right there. But I mean, every waiver could just say every single possible way you could get injured. Most of them do. Like, hey, we can't ever be negligent. We can't ever do anything wrong. And I know you want to come.
You release us, right?
I know you want to come ride this ride, so I'm just going to put every little thing I can inside this waiver, and I can never get in trouble for it.
Yeah. People look at this, and we don't know I believe he's operating independently, and we don't know what avenues he's gone through to like cover himself as far as liability. But I think people are still like, who cares? I've said that the intentions of his are irrelevant, but maybe even taking that into consideration, be like, is this okay? Like, should there be a legal barrier to any of this, what he's doing?
Let's put it this way. Can you contract in Texas, can you contract to legally kill a grandmother that's someone that's aging? So if that's not illegal, why would any type of mutilation be illegal to contract with? I don't even think it's because they're basically saying we're allowed to do this to you, we're allowed to assault you, we're allowed to use bodily injury, but we're going to waiver out of it. So you're contracting to allow people to do something like that. I don't think that.
Well, that's why I say I'm interested to see the reviews after people go through it. Ultimately, it's going to have to live up to quite a bit of hype, or else people are going to be like, hey, that's just a bunch of crap. None of that happens. The same. That's scary.
Right.
And he says in 50 or 51 or whatever, the first one you read was like, you won't be let out unless there's serious injury. Serious injury is not really that hard to get. I mean, you could fall and break an ankle pretty easily. And then he lists tons of severe injuries.
Right.
So I'm wondering, are people ending early?
The only people who have ended early is when the cameras can no longer hold up. From what I have seen, I haven't seen every single, they do this for their content, a lot of it.
Oh,
and so people will be saying no and stop the entire time, and they're not going to stop. So it is really up to their discretion what they constitute physical or psychological injury.
So what do you mean by the cameras stopping?
Who's the judge of what's a...
That's what I'm saying.
Think about that.
It's Russ McKamey.
90% of what we do is argue with judges of what something is a serious injury or not, right? So that takes a judge and a jury. So why are they delegating that to, I don't know, some 18-year-old on his October job for Halloween? I mean, that would definitely come into issue.
You said unless the cameras aren't recording or something like that, right?
Yeah, I've
What does
seen
that mean?
video of like the cameras starting to die, and they're like, okay, we can stop because we can't record.
Oh, because we can't
get any more
document
content.
it.
Yeah, and this is not an accusation or anything like that. I don't want to get sued by Russ McKamey.
So they're using the video for what? Social media? They're posting it on social media. People getting scared and stuff.
I'll show you it here in a minute.
I don't
No,
know.
I'm going to.
But okay, do you think there's some element of this being fake?
Well, there's like a whole Hulu documentary that just came out with people speaking about their experience. I mean, even still with that, it still could be fake. It's a good point. It's always something to consider. This could be just a whole elaborate conspiracy.
We used to think the real world was real.
Jersey Shore.
All of these things we used to think was real, and you come back and you get older.
Well, somebody's going to see this and drive up there and try and go, I would assume. So I mean, some
Is it open
people
to the
have
public,
do
or
that.
is it just a...
Yeah, so and it's year round too. There's like a waiting list. You have to get in contact with them,
I might
get
have heard of this a
signed
long
off.
time ago.
Yeah, it's been around for a while.
Let's go ahead. Let's watch a video. I
All
guess.
right.
Let's get to it.
You'll never be able to unsee it. Put that together just for y'all.
Dang.
Any change of opinions?
I think that there's a level with that waiver of that type of stuff that would be allowed. I don't think, though, when we have to figure out what type of, if it was a permanent injury. And I don't know. Sometimes when you have mental issues that come out of that, those aren't found for months or years until afterwards. So they would need to be, you'd need to see them going to a therapist, but there could definitely be some mental trauma that comes out of that. It could be constituted an injury that is, wouldn't be waiverable. Some stuff, I mean, I do think that you could probably waiver out of some physical stuff, like maybe the waterboarding for a little bit, maybe putting mud. I don't really know, but
That's
when
a
you
big
come
thing,
out of
too.
there, yeah, I mean, I think there's some stuff to waiver out of. It just depends at the end of the time, and it just like in all personal injury, it depends on what type of injuries you sustained afterwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
To see whether or not your claim, and they're going to diminish the claim. Just having the waiver in general will diminish it by a certain amount. It doesn't mean there's no claim, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it depends on which injury was suffered by each person. If someone walks in there and comes out of there and doesn't have, years of, psychiatric help, or a therapist doesn't diagnose as having a mental issue, and they say, I went through all that, but they don't have anything permanent, then you don't have as strong of a claim as someone who came out of there, has years of psychiatric help, or suffered the facial injuries like that guy has. I mean, those are just different things. So sometimes it comes down to when you're asking for damages, or what we'd ask for in trial, it could look bad and you could have a claim, but if the injuries if the injuries aren't there, then regardless if you have a claim, what it's worth, wouldn't be as high as what the other person might have suffered, right?
Yeah, I think after watching that, I would take a case, and I would say that you knew what you were doing, and you said that it won't be stopped unless there's severe injury. Well, here's some severe injuries, and it didn't get stopped. And here's the video of them asking for it to be stopped. Show the video to whoever, and you're like, I don't think their initial reaction is going to be like, oh, that's fine. Yeah, we're good with that.
Well, I think what a good example like this in law school, what they teach about waivers is when you're playing sports, right? You're kind of waiving to getting tackled in a football game, but you're not signing a waiver against a guy grabbing his cleat and taking your helmet off and hitting with it, right? That's not the type of thing that you waived, right? You can't sue your football team for getting injured and playing a brutal sport. Maybe you can in the future. I'm not sure what's going on with the NFL concussion stuff, but for the most part, that's generally well known. In sports, in contact sports, you are waiving if you get injured, right? But there are certain degrees in those sports that if that happens, that it was not in the play, or if it was not the type of injury that you thought you were going to have, then you can't waive out of that. So you can hold the person liable.
Something I thought of, and I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent. I promise I have a point. Some injuries may be caused unintentionally that weren't listed in that waiver. And you could go around that in circles and circles and be like, but you didn't list this here. So, for example, the woman in that video had a tarantula on her face. Fun fact about me, I dabble in tarantula husbandry. I have a pet tarantula.
Oh,
Love
man,
her.
okay.
And so I know a fair bit about the do's and don'ts. What you should not be doing is putting a tarantula near somebody's face. And not because of getting bit. People in the hobby aren't really worried so much about getting bit. Painful, yes. Lethal, no. Their hairs that they kick off when they're scared have barbs on them. And we in the tarantula community will do everything in our power to not get those hairs on us because they're like fiberglass. And there have been instances in the hobby where people have gotten it in their eyes and now have to suffer lifelong damages to their eye and discomfort because of those hairs. And so, it's a hypothetical situation. She's fine. She was actually in the documentary recently. I just thought, what if that tarantula had kicked off into her eye or in her throat? And they're not considering, panic attacks and hyperventilation a reason to pull her out of that. And she has something obstructing her airway. It could not end well. And again, there's no recorded death caused by tarantula bites or hairs, but still it could cause lifelong discomfort.
Serious injury.
Yes.
Well, the first thing you said was an unintentional. I think that's the point of negligence, is it's not intentional. Negligence claims are not intentional. And some of those things are intentional acts, right? So I don't know if an insurance company, because when we get into, in a car wreck, if someone intentionally hits you with their car, that's now a crime. And a lot of insurance policies in the car wrecks won't cover those types of intentional acts. So it sometimes gets out of that coverage. So in this case, I think that's an interesting angle. The injuries are probably still caused by the negligence. I would argue gross negligence probably. You were doing things that you knew. That's the whole thing. You knew this was substantially, likely to cause injury, yet you did it anyway.
Right.
I don't know in Tennessee or too much about. I'm not going to cite a case here about this, but I don't know if you can contract out of gross negligence either. So I'm really interested to see if anybody sued them. I can't imagine someone has not sued these people yet.
Or attempted to.
Especially if this has been going on for longer than one day.
No.
Then, it seems someone's suing them right now.
People are suing drug companies, right? And you don't sign a waiver to take a drug, but now they're suing these drug companies and other companies that they had knowledge that these things, like they knew that these things might cause these problems.
Better, people still sell cigarettes. And you're clearly, they know they're going to get sued. That's
they put a warning label on the side.
Yeah,
It's okay. But those cigarette lawsuits were some of the biggest lawsuits. And you see in the commercials for Vioxx and
they decided the profit was going to be better than what they had to pay for the insurance. They know that. And they had lots of money to spend on attorneys, right? And I think that I don't even care about that waiver that much. I want to see what the injury is, and I think that's what it's going to come down to. Like you said, with the spider situation, that could easily be just negligence on that part that wasn't inside the waiver. But yeah, I think that most attorneys would not think about that waiver too much before going forward. But it would have to depend on the injury, right? If you'd have to see the injury first. If the injury is not enough to sustain enough damages, they might say that the waiver and fighting this is not worth it. That's just what I think they would do. And a lot of times, people come in and they don't know the extent of the injuries. They haven't gotten checked out. They haven't checked out with the therapist. So a lot of times, we got to know the full nature and extent of the injuries. Because, clearly there could be some stuff that happens coming out of that.
I just so happen to know a lot about tarantula husbandry and the anatomy of a tarantula. How many experts do you have to get in on this to be like, okay, this was not appropriate, this was not okay, this could have led to X, Y, and Z, this did lead to X, Y, and Z. It's made more complicated by as far as psychologically, there are a lot of people who suffer with PTSD who went into this with PTSD. So this is their way of coping with it, and they're fully aware of this. So I'm just did this do any worse?
I want to know how much, and I'm sure they do some of this, or I would if you were telling the business guy, how much vetting they do of the people that are coming in there to do it. Because you definitely want to have some type of defense that you found out that they don't have a mental issue coming in there before they're signing that waiver. And you'd want to know. I bet if they're just letting anyone in, it's a little different. It might take months because they are vetting these people.
Yeah.
But
and it seems like they kind of do with people having to get like doctors okaying it. But a man recently went in there. He served multiple tours in Afghanistan. He had severe PTSD. He still went through, and he now is speaking out against them. And he's like fully aware that this place is insane. But he was like, this is not the kind of experience I want because of that consent. And I think that's the biggest thing. When you take away somebody's autonomy, somebody's consent, that's when people are starting to get PO'd.
There's a question. If you have no autonomy or choice in the matter, can you consent? Like, right? What you're saying is, yes, I consented, but I don't have any control. At that point, you're not even participating. You're almost like a victim, really, because you don't have any say in it, right? It's kind of like what the crimes are. The person doesn't have any say in it while they're being tortured. That's sort of the whole point.
And their whole thing is like, of course, you know what you're signing up for, and people are, after they go through the manor, Russ will take a video of you, and you'll be like, don't come here, don't go through McKamey Manor. But I'm just like, still, like, people are flawed. People make bad decisions. That doesn't take away their consent, their autonomy, in my opinion.
Well, in a lot of those situations, they don't seem too capable to fight back, do they? They've got them in a position where physically they are unable to really, at least in the little clip you showed.
Yeah.
Or in some of those other ones where they're you can still run away. That's kind of like the injury I was thinking. Somebody's going to try to run away and run into a chainsaw or something.
That also brings into question, because what they do, and I don't know where Russ takes them. They're either picked up at like a specific location, blindfolded, and kidnapped and driven around and taken to McKamey Manor. And I don't know if they go like around the block 100 times or they go off into the wilderness, but you're like away from people. You're away from anything you know. You don't know where you are. There's not medical staff on standby, by the way. Make that very clear. There's nobody there who could help you.
Oh, that's got to be something right there. I think that would definitely be big, not having medical staff, if that's true. I think not. If you're going to even try to do this and you're negligent and having people there, I think that there'd be a claim on that as well. I mean, even the simple fact that if you cause an injury, you're supposed to help it. I mean, that's a basic rule. So, I don't know. There's a lot of claims. I don't think anybody would have too much of an issue finding an attorney on this case. In fact, call us.
These Tennessee lawyers probably know a lot more about it than we do. I think what I'm seeing is this whole thing is psychological. All of the things you talked about, this release, getting doctor's approval, waiting months, being driven around crazy, telling you there's no medical staff, all of this is psychological. It sucks to have mud put on your face, but the real injury there is psychological. So I'm wondering, in theory, those injuries are a bit tougher to prove, than a broken leg. But I'm really interested to know, like, what does Tennessee say about that? I mean, like, we know in a TBI, you could not have evidence of that for 6 months, 18 months, a year. Like, it could really take a while in a traumatic brain injury from a car wreck. So if you're looking at something like this with things of PTSD, anxiety, these types of injuries that kind of appear to be invisible upon first inspection.
And it's a basic understanding of how the brain works. The brain doesn't know that these people are not actually in real danger, even though it's being pushed on them very heavily that they are in real danger. Now your brain has to continue on in life with this trauma that wasn't real, trying to differentiate what is or is not real. One woman did come to like news outlets to speak out against McKamey Manor, and she said she's still dealing with she doesn't know if she's in danger or not. So like PTSD, it's not a physical wound. There's no pain, but it is. Anybody who is suffering with PTSD knows that it's like the worst. It's awful.
Real. Yeah, I mean, even small things of PTSD, getting in a car accident. You see people that don't like to drive on the highway. I don't like to drive on the highway. I've been in car accidents. That's a real thing. And so there's lots of stuff that you'd have to have it to know that it's a mental issue. And a lot of that stuff, like he says, it takes years to figure out.
My PTSD is a real inconvenience to people because I also refuse to drive on the highway or be a passenger on the highway, actually. It's very disruptive. Yeah. And so I can't imagine how disruptive it has been to these people's lives where they're just in constant terror.
Sometimes what people say is assumption of the risk. I don't know what the Tennessee law is on that, but it's like there is some assumption of the risk, like in the football game, or your knowledge that what you're going into is dangerous.
Would y'all take this case? Like if somebody came forward?
I would take this.
We're not Tennessee lawyers,
Right.
but
No, not even bring that up. Let's just say it.
it's okay. Would we take a case? Let's say that this place was in Texas. Would we take a case? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I would definitely take it, and I think that that guy knows that. I think he's trying to be the craziest haunted house in the world, and he knows that, you know, by doing these things that he's going to have lawsuits against him. I think he's factored it into his business plan, and I think he's okay with that, you know. So I definitely would take it. I think that, you know, depending on the injuries, we'd have to review all that. I'm not worried about the waiver.
What's he gonna say when he gets sued by everybody? Boom. That's part of the platform now.
Yeah.
You know, these people couldn't handle it. They're suing me. Now he's going to play
That's
the victim
more
card.
marketing
It's a bit
for
of
him. Yeah.
a Trump type deal there, where it's kind of a, I'm the victim now. Like, look at all these people attacking me. They signed up for it. You know, now that becomes part of his case too.
It also becomes part of his marketing. We're talking
does,
about it
man.
right now. I
It's-
mean, he's going to
There's
get
no bad publicity.
more people on this. There is no bad publicity. He's going to get more people just from the lawsuit. And I can definitely see why people would say, oh, they waived. These people are just idiots. They shouldn't have signed that thing anyway. I can see both sides, but, you know, and then these victims are probably getting beat down online saying that you did this, and they could be suffering serious things. So I think it's important to see both sides on it. I think that just like in sports, you know, you probably signed up for something, and no matter what, you didn't understand. If they're saying it afterwards, they didn't know that that's what they waived it into, then they might be telling the truth here.
We live in this world where you got to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Like, you got to get page views by saying outlandish stuff, and you want you bigger and better, and this is where we are. I mean, we are at this level where this guy, basically, this is people wanting to live in a horror movie. We're at the point where people see all these things online and in the movies, and now it's like they got to go to the next level and be in it.
Yeah.
And we have to get it. And what he's trying to do, which, you know, I'm not really going to fault him for trying. He's trying to give them the experience they want. And he's trying to get as close as he can to what's allowed or what, you know, he's trying to give the people they want in a way that gives them what they want, but also is not killing people. So
Until, you know, no assumptions, but it did happen.
I think it's
What
a matter
then?
of time, right?
Yeah. What
I
then?
mean, how hard would it be to have a heart attack during that thing?
Yeah.
Not that hard, really.
I mean, you could compare it to skydiving, right? You know, eventually something's going to happen. I forgot what the statistics on there, but I mean, there's a good percentage of people that will see an accident happen. I don't really mind people living their life, you know, and doing whatever they want with their bodies, but there's definitely an extent when it comes to legalizing harm and mutilation to people when it's just not, you know, it might just be void by law, honestly.
There could be like medical conditions that you wouldn't be able to predict. And you go in there and have I don't know if you can predict an aneurysm, but like you go in there and have an aneurysm because of what's going on in there, or you have a seizure. You didn't know you had seizures. You know, things can develop over time, even as adults. So it's just like really walking a slippery slope.
If you're driving a car, you have to wear a seatbelt, or else it's against the law. So, but isn't it up to you whether or not you want to protect yourself by wearing a seatbelt, right? Well, in theory, yes, but no. The state has taken that decision away from you to protect you against yourself, really, because it's only going to save your life. I know back when they came out with seatbelts, there was plenty of old guys, you know, my grandpa, they're like, well, that's my decision, you know, like a lot of those guys they had never driven with a seatbelt before, and they didn't really like it once they got a seatbelt.
And what the lawsuits will do, you know, I don't mind someone pushing the boundaries, right, to see what they are, but the lawsuits are what clarify the boundaries and what's okay and what's not. And unfortunately, those boundaries are set after injuries and after, you know, people get hurt from something like this. So it's not the guy that has a problem here, but to say there is a claim, I would definitely say that there's claims here.
Something I always tell my son, and just a philosophy in general, like as humans, we can do whatever we want. You can do whatever you want. As an adult, you can do whatever you want. The consequences, however, that's what's going to follow, you know, regardless if you want to go out and, you know, commit crimes or do drugs, you know, you're going to have consequences. And I'd say a lot of people are like with the participants, yes, you know, you can do this if you want. There's going to be consequences potentially to it. And I would say the same thing to Russ McKamey, you know, you could fly too high to the sun. Too close to the sun? Too close to the sun. Yeah. Would this constitute your opinion for any kind of like attraction, like the state fairs here? I was telling Dustin, like, I went through a fun house with my son. The whole time I'm looking at, that could malfunction at any point. I could fall through that, like, the whole time.
That's a different type of liability. That's straight negligence. Having your equipment malfunction, or having an 18-wheeler but not checking up on it and not maintaining it, or having it overbearing weight or stuff like that can easily be avoided if you just followed the regulations. That's different than what would happen at a carnival, that you get scared because you're on a ride. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I agree with him, and there's been a lot of cases from amusement parks. There's a lot of cases where someone's doing something that they shouldn't be doing while they're on an otherwise safe situation. So it's kind of case by case.
Right. There's no like intent, like with like if a ride breaks down or if a fun house breaks down or whatever. Yeah,
and you're like, you got to look at what happened. You know, what caused the injury? Was it some dude burying you alive, or was it just a fluke? A piece of rusted metal broke.
Yeah, that's a lot of looking back, and you wouldn't know if that thing failed for the first time and they had no idea about it, or if they had been, hey, we're trying to cut costs. Tickets are only $2 a person this year, so we're going to go ahead and not hire the crew that we checked up on last time. And a lot of times that's what happens with these, put these things up in a day carnivals, is they malfunction because they do cut costs, and they're like, hey, you know what, we're just going to, this thing's about 20 years old, should have been 15 before we retired it, but, we're going to bring it back next year or something like that. So that takes litigation and filing a lawsuit and figuring out the story behind why that equipment malfunctioned. But you can certainly be liable for malfunctioning equipment.
I was scared the whole time at the state fair. The entire time I was like, great, I'm in a PI mindset.
We live in a world, too, I think, where people file a lot of lawsuits. And that's what some people don't like that. But you know what? That's what makes the world safe, too. There's some guy out there doing this right here, and a lawsuit keeps a bit in check. It sets the standards. It allows society, a jury, which is really just the community, to evaluate the situation and give a decision. It would give him a hard line, right? Like, there's always a case of first impression where we don't know. This guy's doing, somebody's doing this, somebody's doing that. Well, I don't know. I mean, we'll look things up all the time. It's like, well, it's not really a case that gives you a definitive answer here. So we're just going to proceed until we get that answer, or someone tells us the answer. So the that's what case law is. I mean, the legislature passes laws. We vote on those laws, and they're law. But the case law, as you can see, and with tort claims, and people getting injured, that started a long time ago. Now we have more and more cases. The first banana peel case. That's why that's a thing. Somebody slipped on a banana peel. Yeah, they talked about how long had the banana peel been there? Was it brown banana? As time goes on, you just have that. This is how we know what the standard of care kind of is. Like, what is too far, what's not. There's some legal phrase that nobody knows until you have a set of facts to apply it to, and then that's when they're like, yep, that was wrong, $10 million.
Yeah, there's only two ways to punish, but not just punish, but deter future conduct.
Yes.
That's what it is. There's two ways to do it. There's criminally, where you put someone in jail, and there's civilly, with money judgment. And we can't put a company in jail for the most part. We need them to have regulations that they have to stick by. Hey, that banana, if you had somebody coming across the halls, which you can certainly do, is hire somebody to check for that thing, then that wouldn't have happened, because you have thousands of people coming into your store every day, which you're making tons of profit off of. So you can afford it. That's a little different than the storekeeper that has 4 people coming in their store every day that has a banana peeled out. No one's going to think that he should have people managing the hallways every 2 hours. But without those big lawsuits, companies will not change what they're doing, because they will not put the costs in to do it. And without those big judgments, without those lawsuits. So that's just, how it goes here. If he doesn't get sued, then he might continue hurting people.
This is true even with car wrecks. When you go to your county courthouse and the jury gets a fact, they get a T-bone accident, they get a rear-end collision. They're doing the same thing, even though it's a regular car wreck. They're saying, this is negligence in our community. You weren't paying attention. You were on your phone. So the community, as the jury, is doing the same. They're keeping the community safe by saying, this is negligent, and because you caused the harm, you're responsible for making it right. You don't go to jail, but here's the deal. you're going to pay for the injuries you caused.
Right.
And we're going to issue a judgment. Whether or not that defendant actually pays it is irrelevant, really. We're valuing the damages done as well. So the defendant most likely has an insurance policy, just like this guy probably does. That's right behind the car wreck, ready to pay what the jury says. So the jury is very important in that scenario where if the jury thinks it's okay to drive around and just run into people, cool. But as soon as the jury member goes out and gets rear-ended, I bet he's singing a different tune. Because now he's the one with the back pain and the neck pain.
Right.
So I think small cases are almost more important because they're more numerous. Not everybody dies, right? Not everybody has a broken bone. There's a lot of people who just kind of get rear-ended and have neck and back pain they didn't have before.
Is it funny? This is a bigger example again. I'm currently working on a video, Grimshaw versus Ford Motor Company. Ford Pinto, they designed it poorly, cheaply, knowingly cheaply. Woman got into a rear end fender bender. The axle, because of how they built it, axle went into the gas tank, caused the interior to go up in flames. Passenger sustained lifelong burns, injuries. Driver died. But it set in motion case studies. There's tons of lawyer case studies on it.
I bet.
And just the expectation of what we expect the people who design our cars, build our cars, give us our cars.
What happens with those car cases is sometimes they find out about the issue and they don't do anything to change it. Years down the road. But what if you had spent the millions of dollars to create the cars, right? And then you have these cars being produced. And then you find out that one person got injured because this car tank blew up. You might overthink a little bit than saying, hey, I'm going to spend these thousands of dollars. You might check out how much does it cost to repair these. And if it doesn't cost $50, you might be, maybe we'll just sell these cars. And it happens time and time again.
Well, you have recalls.
Yeah.
That's why you have recalls. It's very common. Well, there's definitely car companies that have found out about things and have not told the public for a long time, and that's why these big lawsuits are there. The juror, who the community is, was so angry that they put up a verdict of billions of dollars. I mean, this is very common.
That's what I'm saying. We could talk for hours about companies who put profits over people. Companies have to be held in check by the jury system. What he brought up, I think, is the most important, is when they know what they're doing. The tobacco industry, right? I'm pretty sure that there's studies they funded to show that this didn't cause problems and everything.
Do you think Russ McKamey knows what he's doing or thinks what he's doing is bad, or is he just feeling his own
I think he's a genius marketer, and he knows that he's going to the top of the limits, but he goes, people are going to pay attention to me if I'm further than everybody else, and I know I'll get more people here, and I know I'll probably have issues about it, but every bad press is good press for him. I think that he knows that. I mean, he's a genius at it. So
those corporations who have the room to do all these terrible things because they have the money to back it up.
Yeah.
On a smaller scale.
Well, I think how he's different is it seems to be him.
I couldn't name a haunted house in Dallas, but I know this. But this guy's getting videos made about him.
I think you'd be hard pressed to argue that there's no way he cannot know what he's doing causes people problems. So what happens after that, I don't know. I think that there's no way to say that he doesn't know what he's doing is dangerous and could cause severe injury very easily. But on the back end of it, that's why you're saying his motives or whatever. The dude's got to be enjoying it, right? Which kind of leads into the hype a little bit. And all these people in the videos are calling him by name, right? He seems to be right there.
I thought that was really.
He's not disconnected. He's not disconnected from the process.
Yeah. And money hasn't been a discussion in this at all, because nowhere in my research did I see a dollar amount. I don't think you have to pay to go through this. I will correct myself if I'm wrong, but I think that this is just a first come, first serve. If you want to, you can.
That's where the content comes in, right? He has to be making money.
Monetizing.
Yeah, he'd have to be making money off of this
somehow.
thing.
And
got to pay all those people.
This is going to get views, right? People are making money off of YouTube advertisements and social media, and so that's one of the polarizing things about where we are now. I think is people want page views more than anything,
or it's all fake. Again,
or it could be fake, right?
But sometimes people, it is real, and people will pull dangerous stunts that end up in like serious injury or death just for funsies, just for views.
Well, yeah, the jackass guys, right?
Oh my god!
I mean, everything they did was dangerous.
Yeah.
So, but you know.
But they were willing participants. They were like, "I'm doing this. I can stop if I want to."
Sure, I think they did stop some things too.
Yeah.
They didn't sign off on everything, but I don't know. This is just super interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do episode 2 when we find out a little bit about maybe what the little litigation type stuff was on this.
Yeah. You should definitely go watch the Hulu documentary.
Is it scary?
They show you everything, and they will tell you like everything you see is real from Russ McKamey. It's upsetting to watch.
Did he put that out?
Yeah,
huh?
You would have had to have given permission, right?
Yeah, did he put that out? Or?
So if they have video from inside there, he's got to own that video, so he would have had to give him permission.
But he declined to be in the documentary.
I'm sure.
Yeah, he declined to comment.
Answer the tough questions.
It's not as appealing if he's just smiling.
There have been YouTubers and stuff who have been not sent cease and desist letters, but I'm going to sue you. We're going to get a lawyer and sue you. So and they're
for what? Just having a review or saying it, or
well, for one, a pair of YouTubers, they went to McKamey Manor for other stuff other than like injury wise stuff like scamming. He offered I think it was like a $20,000 prize for anybody who could get through McKamey Manor. But nobody could because of the extent.
That's when I heard about it.
Yeah.
Because
they were basically waterboarding people to the point where it's like, at this point he gave them.
That's when I heard about it. They had a prize if you can get through it.
But nobody could get through it. So
that seems even worse.
He did. He let these people go, but only because he knew he was going to waterboard them to the point where like this, it's either death or but nobody's gotten it. And I think one person did get through it, but never got the money. So. But that's kind of irrelevant to talking about the injury aspects, but it is like, it shows us like what kind of person Russ McKamey is. Take from that what you will, because I don't want to get on here and start talking smack and
you're all right.
getting the cease and desist. But
well, this is what he wants. He wants people to talk about.
Yeah, I mean,
this is public information.
I had no idea about this either.
Yeah, this is public information. All of this you can find very openly on the internet on now this open documentary. So, do your own research as well. Don't let this be the end all to your research on McKamey Manor. But yeah, thanks for talking to me about this. I if there's any more developments, we should absolutely come back to it. But I thought it would be an interesting video for Halloween, and also just like, I haven't seen any attorneys talk about this. Again, this is not saying what you should or shouldn't be doing legally. This is not advice. These are opinions that I wanted to get from you gentlemen. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.